What's going on, sports fans? Thank you so much for tuning in, coming in to hang out and whatnot. And we got another exciting episode for you of Fantasy Haus Live. This time we're doing it a little bit different this week. So instead of doing it straight to a stream, we're actually going to do it kind of just a YouTube episode this time and see how it goes. And we'll put in like the sections so you can, we'll also add in sections so you can kind of get to each part of the video super quick. Just something a little different that we're going to try. Not really sure how it's going to work out. Hopefully it's good. But yeah, like I said, thank you guys so much for tuning in and just deciding to spend some time here with me today. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, everything right down below. Other than that, we shall get into the action. So let's get to it. We are going to start with, our usual spot in the reviews. It's yet another big week. So let's take a quicker look at how everything broke down. In our number one overall game of the week, we had Team Nugent taking home the big victory yet again, proving to be a dominant force this year in this league, winning by a score of 122-85 over the Chicago Deviants, who were a former top dog. In our next matchup number 2, we have the number 2 overall, the Deebos-Nutz, technically now renamed actually, but we'll see that later on. Got the win, another big win over the Bajayjays, in a score of 155-125. Then in our third overall matchup, we had Destinoooo picking up yet another big win, at a score of 132-117 over Bob's Burgers. And then our fourth matchup, we had the Lame Tanks and Ceedeez Nuts squaring off, in which Ceedeez Nuts was able to pull off the victory at a score of 123-97. And then in our last game, most certainly not least, well, kind of, it does involve the last place Team Breeki, part of the dumpster fires, in which case the champ Cheese was able to get the win, narrowly, might I add, by a score of 102-97. And now we're going to take a look at how these scores broke down. Boom. Alright, starting with our number overall top dog, in the Team Nugent going against the Chicago Deviants. Getting in a little bit closer with this box score here. Okay, here we go. So we had Tom Brady going off for 18 points in the win over the Rams, while we had Lamar Jackson going off for 18 in the big win over New Orleans. Moving into the battle of the running backs, Antonio Gibson, who everyone thought was going to be, this big starting running back in Washington, hasn't really quite panned out so far. Only able to get 6.7 points this week in the losing effort to Minnesota. It was only a 3-point loss, so not that bad. Then across the way, we had Leonard Fournette able to put up mediocre 11 points in the winning 3-point win over the Rams. In the battle of the running backs, like the second battle of the running backs, I should say, Kenyon Drake was able to put up big numbers. I should say big numbers. 24 points, almost 25 in fact, in that win over New Orleans, while Miles Sanders able to get 15 in the almost blowout win over Houston. You'd think Miles Sanders would be able to get more, but there is a lot of mouths to feed on that Eagles offense. Moving into the wide receivers, A.J. Brown continuing to have a very awesome season. As are the Eagles, since they are doing very well this season. Probably one of the favorites to go to to win the NFC in total. Anyways, A.J. Brown able to get 15 points in that big win over Houston. While on the opposite side, Robert Woods only putting up a goose egg. Definitely, obviously, that is not going to help your team all there. Moving into the wide receivers, George Pickens was on a bye, and he did not actually get subbed out, so that's just a massive point loss there. Rondell Moore able to put up 14 in the modest 14 points in the loss to Seattle. Robert Tonyan only able to get not even 6 points in the pathetic loss to Detroit. Green Bay has looked terrible this season. Not all of it's Tanyan's fault. A lot of it, say, is just the team. Rodgers, play calling. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on that is wrong in Green Bay at the moment. Across the way, on the other tight end, Hunter Henry, able to get 9 points, a little bit better than Tanyan on the day in that blowout win over Indy. In the flex position, we have T. Higgins continuing to have a very, despite the Bengals having the very down year, T. Higgins having a very consistent year this year. He's been very consistent. My lord, words are hard sometimes. In the they had a big win over Carolina, and it was a huge blowout. I know Carolina's been pretty much decimated this season. On the opposite, you had Romeo Doubs, who unfortunately got a high ankle sprain, going to be out for a few weeks. Only able to get 2.8 points before he was injured. Then in the defenses, the Chiefs able to get 6 points in that narrow win while in Tennessee, while the Patriots defense continuing to produce despite the fact it's funny because it's year in year out that it feels like this defense is able to produce, and this time they came up big against a very underperforming Colts team and able to get 26 points. Moving into the kickers, Nick Folk able to get 17 points in the big win over Indy, while Mason Crosby was only able to get 3 in the depressing loss to Detroit. Next match we're going to take a quick little look at here is Deebos-Nutz and Bajayjays. It was another it was a huge week for Deebos-Nutz, so you got to give it up for them, which they are now technically a new name. I present to thee, for the first time, or at least in our league, I present to thee, The-Cheetah Hill is the new team name. So, The-Cheetah Hill, formerly Deebos-Nutz, unfortunately taking the L this week. But if you look on the opposites, if you look at Bajayjays' team, you can see kind of why that happened this week. Kirk Cousins still having a spectacular season, able to get 19 points in that narrow win over Washington, his old team, while Derek Carr finally showing some life with the Raiders. Even though they lost by 7, still was able to get 20 points. Derrick Henry able to get 23 as he starts to return to his King Henry status. Austin Eckler continuing to be spectacular. He's like a little muscle hamster dude, picking up 24 points in that big win over Atlanta. Moving into the next round of running backs, Travis Etienne continuing to have put his name forth for the comeback player of the year, putting up 26 big ones in the 7-point win over Vegas, while Alvin Kamara kind of coming back to earth a little bit this week, only able to get 9.2 points in the loss to Baltimore. In the first sets of wide receivers, you had his team's sake, Mr. Tyreek Hill, of getting 23. Wow, my bad, I can't read points. That's in the projected. 27 points in the It's funny, that was only a pretty narrow win over Chicago, 35-32. But still, insane game overall. And another just performance where both Miami receivers just had a day. Tyreek having an amazing season, proving that it does not matter the quarterback. He's still one of the best wide receivers in the league. On the opposite side, you had Michael Pittman Jr. only able to get 5.4 points in what can only be described as a very disappointing season for not Atlanta, Indianapolis. In the battle of the second wide receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown was able to get 9.5 points, while Allen Lazard was able to get 18 in the loss to Detroit. It looks like Allen Lazard is going to be almost that de facto at number 1 there in Green Bay, since pretty much there's like no one left. Everyone's fallen to injury, so he's going to end up being the beneficiary of that, him and pretty much anyone who's left healthy. Moving into the tight ends, you have Hayden Hurst able to get 8.5 points in the that blowout win over Carolina, while Jared Everett, who had an amazing start to the season, or a better start to the season, kind of has rebounded and come back to earth a little bit, able to get 8.6 points in the win over Atlanta. Then in the flex spot, Mr. Waddle putting up 19 points in that, like I said, narrow win over Chicago, while Kenneth Walker, the rookie sensation for Seattle, putting up 27 big ones in the big win over Arizona. In the defenses, we saw the Dolphins able to get 8 points in the win over Chicago, while the Bengals in the big win over Carolina this week got 8 points. And lastly, in the battle of the kickers, Ryan Suckup, who is also having another very nice season, despite the fact that Tampa Bay's actually been very, I mean, you all know, Tampa Bay's been having a very much down year. So he was only able to get 11 points. Well, I shouldn't say only able to get. The offensive woes of Tampa has kind of led to Ryan Suckup having a little bit more opportunities, which he seized them. As we can see here, putting up a decent 11 points in the 6-point or 3-point win over the Rams. Wow, sometimes I can't even do math, lol. Imagine. Anyways, and then on the opposite side, you had Evan McPherson, even though it was a blowout win, only able to get 5 points. Third matchup, we saw Destinoooo would be able to pick up that big win over Bob's Burgers, who was kind of making a storming their way back. We can take a look at how that broke down. Okay, so in the quarterback spot, we had Justin Herbert going off for 14 points in the win over Atlanta, while Patrick Mahomes was was able to throw up 38 big points in the win over Tennessee, looking like an MVP candidate, like we all know he can be. Cordell Patterson making his return to the lineup and making 18 points in his return, and his presence felt despite coming back in a losing effort. Josh Jacobs able to continue his good season, able to get 11 points in the loss to Jacksonville. In the next round of running backs, Jamal Williams able to get 10 points in the comeback, or not, I shouldn't say come from behind, I should say the upset over Green Bay, while Khalil Herbert this week was only able to get 2 points in the narrow loss to Miami. In the wide receivers, we had Scary Terry McLaurin going off for 10 points despite losing to Minnesota, while Juju Smith-Schuster on the other side going off for 18 points in that big win over Tennessee. Moving into wide receivers, the second wide receivers, we had Christian Kirk showing some more flashes of greatness here, dropping 21 in the 7-point win over Vegas, while Adam Thielen, who used to be the number one, not so much the case there anymore in Minnesota, able to get 9.7 points in the win over Washington. In the battle of the tight ends, newly traded from Detroit to Minnesota, TJ Hawkinson, tight end, able to get 16, and really starting to show out for his team in that win over the Commanders, while Travis Kelce, who is obviously going to be one of the best tight ends in the league, getting 20 points this week and get another big win over Tennessee. In the flex spot, we had Chris Olave, the rookie sensation for the Saints, going for 13 despite losing to Baltimore, while DK Metcalf going off for 14 this week while beating Arizona 31-21. So pretty similar stat line out of your flex spots right there, which you love to see. You got to keep pace with your opponent. Moving into the defenses, we had the Saints get 3 points in the loss to Baltimore, while inversely, the Ravens are able to get 11 points while beating up on the Saints. And kind of the same case here, Justin Tucker able to get 10 points in that big win over New Orleans, while Butker was only able to get 5. I thought it was Ravens, and anyways, while Harrison was able to get only 5 in that win over Tennessee. In our fourth matchup, we had the Lane Tanks and Mr. Ceedeez Nuts. And Ceedeez Nuts able to put together another win, able to keep his head above water with a winning record, which everyone just loves to see. We can kind of see how that happened. So, Mr. Tua Tagovailoa went off for 27 points, continuing to have an amazing season, making everyone on that team look good. Going off for 27 in that win over Chicago, while Josh Allen also having an MVP type season, throwing up 26, almost 27 in that loss to the Jets. Dameon Pierce, the rookie sensation for Houston, going off for 13, despite losing to Philadelphia, while Jonathan Taylor on the opposite side of the field was actually out this game and sat out, so that was a huge blow, putting up a big goose egg. Moving up into the running backs, Ravondre Stevenson, who I don't think a lot of people saw coming into the season that would be as solid and solidifying themselves as that number one back as he has, but congrats to him, man. He's been killing it. 16 points this week in that blowout win over Indy. DeAndre Swift, who's been battling injuries this season, and also been seeing a little bit of carries lost to Jamal Williams because he's been performing very well. DeAndre Swift only able to get 8 points in the big win over Green Bay this week. Moving into the wide receivers, Cooper Kupp able to get 26 points this week, despite losing to Tampa. Well, Tyler Lockett was able to get almost able to replicate that at 17, in that big win over Arizona. In the wide receiver twos, you had DeAndre Hopkins continuing to just march on through opponents like he has. I think this is like his second game back and able to get 13 points, despite it was a losing effort. On the opposite side, you had Tyler Boyd, who has shown some flashes of greatness earlier this season, only able to get 9.4 points this week, even though blowing out Carolina. The tight ends, you had Kyle Pitts, who kind of returned, who showed some of those bright flashes from last season or last week, but unfortunately this week he was only able to get 4.7 points in that loss to the Chargers, while Zach Ertz actually had the much better week, able to get 15 points despite losing to Seattle. In the flex spot, you had Mike Evans, able to get 9 points in the win over the Rams, while Devin Singletary was only able to get 18, that's not what that says, 8.8 in the loss to the Jets. Then moving into the defenses, you had the Eagles, who were able to get 8 points in that win over Houston, while the Packers, in what everyone thought was going to be pretty much a trap game against Detroit, it did not pan out that way. They were, even though it was a losing effort, they were able to get 5 points. Younghoe Koo able to put up 4 points in the loss to the Chargers, while Matt Gay was also able to throw up 7 points in the loss to Tampa. And lastly, I think it's lastly, we're going to bring up the Champ Cheese versus Team Breeki. And this match was actually pretty damn close. And I'll show you right now. So, first off, as always with their quarterbacks, we had Kyler Murray going off for 20 points despite losing to Seattle. On the opposite side, Jalen Hurts, who's having an amazing year this year, able to get 22 points in the big, pretty much mollywhopping of Houston there. In the battle of the running backs, Dalvin Cook, who was pretty quiet for most of the day, kind of salvaged the day at the end there, able to get 13 points in the win over Washington, while Cam Akers, who saw just a couple snaps, able to get not even a single point, 0.03 in that loss to Tampa. Moving into the second set of running backs, you had Dante Foreman, who everyone thought had solidified himself as kind of the top dog in that Carolina backfield. Kind of did not have that same output, only able to get 4.1 points this week, while Aaron Jones on the opposite side of the ball did leave the game early and was only able to get 6.5 points in the loss to Detroit. Then, in the wide receiver battles, we had Justin Jefferson dropping 25 points in the win over Washington, while Stephon Diggs only able to get 14 in the loss to the Jets. I shouldn't say only 14. That's actually quite good. Moving into the second set of wide receivers, Joshua Palmer went off for 18 in that win over Atlanta, while Davante Adams had himself a day, going off for 36, almost 40 points in that losing effort to Jacksonville, which is funny. He put up all those points and they still lost. Then moving into the tight ends, Tyler Higbee unfortunately throwing up a nice donut in that loss to Tampa, while Pat Freiermuth, lucky, I kind of lucked out there, was on a bye, so there was no points scored at all for him either. Then in the flex position, as even though it was a bit of a beatdown on Houston, Devontae Smith was only able to get 4.2 points. On the opposite side of that ball, and kind of in a similar situation, Allen Robinson was only able to get 5.4 points, so kind of similar stat line there. Then in the battle of the defenses, in a very narrow victory, the Vikings are able to get 8 points, while the Bills, going against the Jets, in a also narrow loss, were only able to get 4. Then finally, in the battle of the kickers, Jason Myers was able to get 7.8 points in that big win over Arizona, while Daniel Carlson was also able to get 8 points in the narrow loss to Jacksonville. Which now brings me to, boom, the power rankings. Now, oh, where's my picture? There it is. Okay. So, let's start at the top, where Team Nuge remaining firmly at the top with a record of 7-2. Then, also with a record of 7-2, you had the newly named The-Cheetah Hill. And then rounding out our top dogs is Destinoooo, sitting at 6-3. Then moving down into the middle of the pack, we have Ceedeez Nuts, 5.4 lol. Then we have in the 5th spot, actually Ceedeez Nuts was actually able to go up one spot and reclaim their 4th spot, while the Deviants continue their slight fall from grace, dropping to 5-4 on the year. The Bajayjays staying real solid there at number 6, with a record of 4-5, while Champ Cheese was able to increase their spot up to number 7 with a record of 4-5, and Bob's Burgers dropped back down to 8th with also a record of 4-5. Then our lame tanks, then our dumpster fires do not actually change position at all. The lame tanks still sitting there at 9th spot with a record of 2-7, and then lastly, but not least, Team Breeki sitting at 1-8. This brings us to our kind of last little bit here, which is the preview of the next upcoming week. We're week 10. So, in our first big overall matchup of the week, we got Team Nugent coming in at number 1, taking on Champ Cheese, newly at number 7, sitting at a record of 4-5. In our matchup of our second overall matchup of the week, you have the Cheetah Hill sitting at a record of 7-2, taking on the 4th seed Ceedeez Nuts at 5-4. Then in our third matchup, the 8th seed Bob's Burgers, sitting at a record of 5-4, is taking on the 6th seed Bajayjays, also at a record of 5-4. Then in our second to last matchup, we have Chicago's Deviants, sitting at a record of 5-4, taking on the Lame Tanks, one of the dumpster fires at the 9th spot there. And then lastly, and probably kind of least, obviously that's what last means. Well, not technically, but Destinoooo coming in that 3rd spot at a record of 6-3, takes on the struggling Team Breeki, who was only able to get 1 win so far this week, or this season, and still rocking that 10th spot. Starting with Nuge and Champ Cheese. Okay, here we go. So we have Tom Brady and Tom Brady and the Bucks going against Seattle versus Kyler. And the Cards going against the Rams. Kyler, the Rams are not doing that great. Shoot, this might be This might be close, but I think Kyler might have the better day since the Rams have not. The Rams just lost, but also so did the Cards. They just lost to Seattle, and because Seattle just beat Arizona, I think they'll have a chance against Tom Brady here. But I think Kyler's probably gonna have the better day. In the battle of the running backs, number 1, we have Christian McCaffrey for San Fran going against the Chargers, while Dalvin Cook in Minnesota going against Buffalo. Oof. I gotta go with McCaffrey in here. That matchup with Cook in Minnesota versus Buffalo is going to be brutal. So definitely roll with McCaffrey. In running backs number 2, we have Tony Pollard in Dallas going against Green Bay versus Saquon and the Giants going against Houston. Ooh. This is a recipe. This is a very good recipe for both backs. Tony Pollard been getting a ton of looks since Ezekiel Elliott has not been getting much. While on the opposite side, Saquon is kind of going on this revenge tour. But at the current moment, I would say that Saquon's going to have the better day. But I would not be surprised if Houston is somehow able to bottle up Saquon. In the battle of the wide receiver 1s, we have AJ Brown in Philly taking on Justin Jefferson in Minnesota going against Buffalo. Gotta go AJ Brown because they're going purely based on that matchup. I would love to pick Justin Jefferson here, but going against Buffalo is pretty iffy. In our wide receiver number 2 spot, we have Rondell Moore in Arizona going against the Rams versus Josh Palmer and the Chargers going against San Francisco. Well, they are going to lean on Josh Palmer more, assuming that there are a few players out with injuries there. I think I'd probably have to go with Josh Palmer on this one over Rondell Moore. I like that Cardinals offense, but it's been just too up and down. In our battle of the tight ends, we had Robert Tonyan in Green Bay taking on Dallas versus Tyler Higbee and the Rams going against Arizona. Gotta go with Higbee on this one. Just feel like you can't really trust too many players on Green Bay right now. Even though there's not too many mouths left to feed, Tonyan still hasn't received too many of those receptions, so I would definitely roll out Higbee here. In the flex spot, we got CeeDee Lamb in Dallas going against Green Bay versus Devontae Smith, and Philly going against Washington. Well, if Dak or if Alexander is able to shadow, then CD might not be getting much of it, but I think that kind of just I think that kind of sells it for me. I think we'll go Devontae Smith purely based on that who they're going against. Then defense, you got the Cowboys going against Green Bay versus the Raiders going against Indy. And lastly, you have Graham Gano and the Giants going against Houston versus Jason Myers and Seattle going against Tampa. I kind of expect New York to be able to go down the field. Jason Myers in Seattle versus Tampa. Might have to go Jason Myers on this one just because it's going to be a close matchup. They're going to be kind of battling back and forth. In our next preview, we are going to take a look at newly renamed The-Cheetah Hill and Mr. Ceedeez Nuts, his former namesake. We have Derek Carr in Las Vegas taking on Indy versus Tua. And Miami going against Cleveland. Ooh, gotta go Tua on this one. Normally you would pick Indy here, but just because the Raiders have not been like super great this year, so I have a more stronger feeling that Tua would put up bigger numbers here. In running back number 2, we have Austin Eckler and the Chargers taking on San Fran versus James Conner and Arizona going against the Rams. Oof. Gotta go Austin Eckler on this one. He's been killing it all season. He loves to run through the contact, so yeah, definitely go with Eckler here. Um, in the running back 2 spot, you have Travis Etienne in Jacksonville going against KC versus Dameon Pierce in Houston going against the Giants. I think Dameon Pierce would have the better day against the Giants. I think KC's defense is a little bit more stout, but hey, I'm ready to eat my words. In the wide receivers, we have, let's see, Tyreek Hill in Miami going against Cleveland versus Cooper Kupp and the Rams going against Arizona. Man. We're going against Cleveland. We're going against Arizona. Probably got to go with Tyreek here just because it's a bad defense and it seems like Tua, Austin Eckler, Tyreek are all just kind of on the same page. While Cooper Kupp feels like pretty much the only person to throw to there in LA, so I feel like it's not going to be too hard to lock him up. In the wide receiver 2 spot, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown going against Chicago versus DeAndre Hopkins in Arizona going against the Rams. Both are going to be very excellent wide receivers. Might roll DeAndre Hopkins on here. But I would also not be surprised if Amon-Ra St. Brown also had a similar, if not better, stat line. Let's see. Then we move into the tight ends. We got Dawson Knox of Buffalo taking on Minnesota versus Kyle Pitts in Atlanta taking on Carolina. I would love to see the Kyle Pitts resurgence come back, but it does not seem like that has been the case. So I might get Dawson Knox, or might pick Dawson Knox here, just because I think he'll reliably be targeted. Then moving into the flex spot, we got Jalen Waddle in Miami going against Cleveland versus Mike Evans in Tampa going against Seattle. And he's got a questionable injury designation. I'll throw Jalen in there, just because Miami Dolphins have been having an amazing season, so I can totally see Jalen Waddle be able to have a better day than Mike Evans would. Then for defenses, we had the Giants taking on Houston versus the Eagles. The Giants going against Houston versus the Eagles versus Washington. Gotta go with the Eagles on this one since they're undefeated, kicking ass. Easy decision, really. Then in the kickers, we have Ryan Suckup in Tampa going against Seattle versus Young Ho Koo, and Atlanta going against Carolina. I'll probably go Ryan Suckup on this one. The next thing we're going to get into is the third matchup, which is the Bob's Burgers and our 8th seed taking on the Bajayjays, who are looking to continue their string of success and add to that win, that big win that they had last week. Okay. So we have Kirk Cousins in Minnesota going against Buffalo versus Justin Herbert and the Chargers going against San Fran. This is gonna be a close one, but if I had to guess, maybe Justin Herbert, but I could also totally see Kirk having a good day or being completely crapped on versus Buffalo. But I'm gonna guess Justin Herbert. Then in the running backs, we got Cordell Patterson in Atlanta going against Carolina versus Derrick Henry in Tennessee going against Denver. It's hard to bet against Tennessee when they got the rushing champ and King Henry there. But that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go Derrick Henry. it's like even though the matchup is definitely there for Cordell Patterson to have a good game now. In the second round of running backs, we have Alvin Kamara in New Orleans going against Pittsburgh, while Jamal Williams and the Lions go against Chicago. I think Kamara will have the better day. He was kind of underused last week, and I expect Pitt to definitely give up some touchdowns to him. In the first matchup of wide receivers, we have Michael Pittman Jr. and Indy going against Scary Terry McLaurin, and Washington going against Philly. And that's going to be a tough match. But I think I'm going to have to roll with Scary Terry on this one. Just hard to trust Pittman when Indy just feels like it's imploding. Moving into wide receiver 2, Allen Lazard, who is currently rocking the questionable designation. Green Bay plays Dallas, who is one of the league leaders in defensively, going against Christian Kirk, who's got a stout, tough defense in KC to deal with. I think Lazard might have the better day somehow working against that Dallas defense. In the battle of the tight ends, you got Gerald Everett and the Chargers going against San Fran versus Hawkinson. Minnesota going against Buffalo. I actually think Hawkinson might have the better day, even though it's against a very, very good Bills defense. Flex position, we got Chris Olave and Pitt, or in New Orleans going against Pitt versus Kenneth Walker in Seattle going against Tampa. The potential is there for Olave, but I don't really trust it. So I'd probably roll with Kenneth Walker on this one. In the defenses, we got the Saints taking on Pitt versus the Bengals, who are on bye, so this one's goes straight to the Saints. And then same thing with the kickers here. Oh, and it's a tie for the kickers because they're, both on bye, so those people got to change their lineups. In our fourth matchup, we have the Chicago Deviants taking on the Lame Tanks, who are kind of having a rough season, but we shall see. Looks like a lot of people are going to have some roster setting to do. Let's take a look at it. So we have Josh Allen taking on in Buffalo going against Minnesota versus Lamar, who's on bye. So this one's got to go straight to Josh Allen. Moving into the running backs, first set of running backs, you have Jonathan Taylor, who's had a very injury-plagued season, which is unfortunate to hear. And Indy going against Las Vegas versus Leonard Fournette and Tampa going against Seattle. Fournette and Tampa of late have also kind of been struggling, but I think there's more potential there to have a better day than Jonathan Taylor will. Moving into running backs, number 2, of course, we have DeAndre Swift in Detroit versus Chicago, while Miles Sanders in Philadelphia take on Washington. Hard to say, but DeAndre Swift, if he does play, won't get the entire workhorse load because Jamal Williams has been there and being pretty consistent. So I think against the Commanders, you might see Washington get a little bit more, or you might see Miles Sanders actually get a little bit better stat line. In the wide receiver number 1s, we have Amari Cooper in Cleveland going against Miami versus Robert Woods in Tennessee going against Denver. I think for this matchup, got to go with Amari Cooper, who's actually been having a very good season in Cleveland there. Battle of the wide receivers, round 2, we got Tyler Lockett in Seattle taking on Tampa versus George Pickens and Pitt taking on New Orleans. I think I might roll Tyler Lockett on this one just because Gino has been connecting with him recently pretty good. Moving into the tight ends, we got Kittle in San Fran taking on the Chargers versus Hunter Henry, who's on a bye, so that's just going to go straight to Kittle. Then in the flex, we have DJ Moore in Carolina taking on Atlanta versus the flex and Romeo Doubs, who's actually injured and out. So this one actually got to go straight to DJ Moore. In that flex spot, or in that defense spot, we have the Packers defense against Detroit, Dallas. while the Patriots are on bye, so that's going to go straight to the Packers. And then finally, Matt Gay and the Rams take on Arizona versus Mason Crosby and the Packers taking on Dallas. If we can somehow stay competitive, I'd love to say Mason Crosby, but I think Matt Gay is going to put up more points. I think the Rams offense is going to stall out a lot more, which is going to lead to more field goals. So lastly, we have the Destinoooo taking on Team Breeki. And let's take a look at how this one is shaping up. Okay, so we have Patrick Mahomes and KC taking on Jacksonville versus Jalen Hurts and Philly taking on Washington. Ooh, this is going to be a good matchup, but I'm going to have to roll with Mahomes on this one. He's looking pretty much unstoppable at the moment. Same thing with Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, but at the moment I'm going with Mahomes. Running back number 1, we got Chubb in Cleveland going against Miami versus Cam Akers and Arizona. Definitely rolling Chubb. Cam Akers is, I'm pretty sure he's requested a trade and is not doing that well, so definitely Chubb. In second set of running backs, we have Josh Jacobs in Las Vegas going against Indy versus Aaron Jones and Green Bay going against Dallas. Gotta go Josh Jacobs all day on this one. Even if Aaron Jones does play, still would be risky to play him against Dallas or pick him against Dallas just because Green Bay has not been playing good at all this season. Looking real bad. Then in the battle of the wide receivers, we have Juju Smith-Schuster and the KC taking on Jacksonville versus Stephon Diggs and Buffalo taking on Minnesota. I think Stephon Diggs will have a nice big day against his former team. In the battle of the wide receivers number 2, we got Jerry Jeudy in Denver taking on Tennessee versus Devontae Adams in Las Vegas taking on Indy. Gotta roll with Tay here as well, just because that matchup is too juicy not to bet on. Then in our tight end flex, we have Travis Kelce going against Jacksonville on one end versus Pat Freiermuth going against New Orleans. And Pat Freiermuth is with Pitt, but you gotta roll with one of the best tight ends in the league, Travis Kelce. Moving into the flex position, we have DK Metcalf in Seattle taking on Tampa versus Allen Robinson and the Rams taking on Arizona. Allen Robinson seems to be kind of the forgotten man there. Also, the Rams are really struggling this year, so we're going to have to roll with DK, although we could totally see Geno in a bit of a pickle in this matchup. And then lastly, we have the Chargers taking on San Fran for defense, and the Bills taking on Minnesota. I think the Bills will put up a better stat line defensively than the Chargers will. Well, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to yet another episode of Fantasy Haus Live YouTube edition, where we just kept it all here on the YouTubes. We went over the preview, we went over the weekly review, covered all the scores. We went over the newly updated power rankings, and we went over the preview for the next week. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope to see you guys in next time. Peace out, stay safe, and I will see you later, sports fans. Until next time. Bye. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum, bum.